Sora no Kiseki, the first, Sora no Kiseki FC, otherwise known as Trails in the Sky FC in the West, is the first game in the over 20-year-old interconnected Trails series. Developed by Nihon Falcom, Trails is a sub-series of turn-based JRPGs, most known for its thoughtful world building, memorable characters, and fantastic music. Now, it's no small secret that I'm a pretty big Trails fan. I'm a freaking palm now, for crying out loud. And I've always wanted the opportunity to talk about these games. For reference, I started with the first game, Trails in the Sky FC, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago at this point, and then after I was done, I proceeded to play every game in the series over the course of 7 months. Consecutively. Even the weird might be canon, might not spin-off. So yeah, you could say I slightly enjoy this series. But after all was said and done, I found myself really clicking with the first 5 games. That being the Sky Trilogy and the Crossbell Duology. And I remember this rhetoric or opinion that was widely thrown around when I was looking into trying a Trails game for the first time, specifically Sky FC. Things like, it's the slowest of slow burns, nothing really happens until the end, Sky SC is where the story really begins, or most notoriously, this game is basically a 40-hour prologue. I was bracing myself for the worst, but in the end, I walked away with one of my favorite games of all time. With the remake of this game coming out in the very near future, hopefully this video will actually be edited in time, I think that now is a prime chance to look back on why this entry in particular was such a special experience, and one of the best Trails games that still stands the test of time. I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off with this first section. One of the reasons this game is a bit overlooked is because of the combat. And although this is an attempt to absolutely glaze FC, I cannot defend the gameplay. It's definitely archaic, and in the infancy of what Trails combat will eventually become. But after playing the games with much more engaging combat systems, there actually were things I missed that Falcom has started to drift away from with the simplicity of FC. The combat in FC utilizes a grid system where both allies and enemies take turns performing actions. You've got basic attacks, magic attacks known as arts, special attacks called crafts, and the ability to just move or use items. Everyone also has a super move known as an S-craft, which can ignore the turn order and be performed at any time as long as you have enough craft points. The green meter at the bottom. And you get these by just dealing or taking damage. It's a fairly simple and straightforward battle system. The first thing that caught my eye with the battles in FC was just how large these arenas were. It's not just about which moves you utilize and when you use them, but how you're positioned as well. Many of the magic attacks have various ranges, and that includes the crafts both from your party and the bosses. Being all grouped together can help when you're performing healing arts or buffs, but sometimes that can be to your detriment when enemies start spamming huge area of effect moves. Beneath a simple turn-based system lies a slight layer of tactical decision making that kinda starts to fade in these games after a while. Even the basic attacks in the Sky games have a little bit of knockback to them, helping you to reposition your enemies so you can hit them in one fell swoop. Not to say that the recent games don't consider movement and positioning at all, but now it feels as though these combat arenas have shrunk to the point where you'll always be in a favorable formation. In addition, now you can just kind of move and attack, and so just moving out of the way isn't really a decision to make anymore. It's just a part of the game. It could also just be a scaling thing as we've transitioned to fully 3D character models over the isometric view in 2D sprites. But I mean, come on now, how often has anyone actually opened the tactics menu to change their battle formation? You know what? Don't answer that. There's always that one guy. One other thing I began to miss when it came to combat was the way arts had to be created rather than just input into your orbments. To the uninformed, orbments are basically just conduits the characters in the series use to cast magic. I really enjoyed configuring which quartz had to go where to get the strongest spells, and it just felt so satisfying seeing that spell list grow as you messed with it more and more, even if it does create a headache of a menu to scroll through. Back in my day, we had to create odds using quartz. Nowadays, you kids just download Arial.mp3 into your cell phone and call it a day. They have started to hit a kind of sweet spot when it comes to orbment setup in the latest few games, but I'll always cherish the feeling of actually being able to see the magic available to you early on and working towards achieving it in the end. Now, the major reason people end up getting sucked into the Trails series is the writing. It's phenomenal, for the most part, and the first game is no exception. However, many people seem to gloss over it and just view it as a stepping stone for the hype and crazy moments that happen later on. It's referred to as a slow burn or a necessary prologue, and at first I was pretty inclined to agree with that popular opinion. But the further along I got in the series, the more I began to miss the starting point, simply because of its unique situation of having the, quote unquote, lowest stakes. In Sky FC, you follow the path of adopted siblings Estelle and Joshua Bright as they work their way around the Liberal Kingdom to become senior bracers. Bracers are essentially mercenaries for hire that aim to assist the common man of their given region. This can range from slaying monsters, escorting cargo, or even finding missing persons. This setup is the absolute best way to begin laying the groundwork for the sweeping narrative that is Trails. Not only do you have the narrative framing device of traveling the country to achieve senior bracer status, but by also using the perspective of the young and inexperienced duo, the writers are able to ease players into the world organically. You're taking your first steps alongside Estelle, talking to various people you meet throughout the country, learning more about the history of neighboring territories or how the major religion of the continent has spread. For the majority of the game, multiple characters refer to her father, Cassius Bright, with intense admiration and respect. But from Estelle's perspective, he's a no-good, middle-aged man who is always out doing who knows what instead of being a father. You're able to have a comforting protagonist who knows just as little as you do in the moment, because, frankly, she's a little dumb, but by actively seeking out new information, fighting more battles, just advancing the story bit by bit, you and Estelle become increasingly ingrained into the world. The small and seemingly insignificant moments that some might attribute to the slow pacing of this game are some of the most important events that shape who these characters are. To say nothing happens until the end, I find to be a bit disingenuous. Without the context of why these characters are even here in the first place, the story being told just wouldn't impact you in the same way. And if you're not big on having a story without big action scenes and world-ending calamities happening every 5 seconds, the dialogue more than makes up for this. Now, the series has always been mired with anime tropes, even from the very beginning, but I find one of the strengths of Trails is being able to create strong and believable relationships between characters despite that. One example being yet again Estelle and Joshua. Estelle fits the mold as your everyday shonen protagonist, upbeat, positive, determined, and loves her friends. And yet, despite that, she can feel lost, afraid, depressed, and this can change how others speak to her. Joshua, being the much more cool and collected type, loves to riff on Estelle for her impulsiveness and naivete. They poke fun at each other quite a bit, but since they've spent the past 5 or so years together, they have the intuition to know where to draw the line and lift each other up when they need it most. Joshua can skirt the line of sarcasm and support, and the same applies for Estelle. I can make a whole video about these two one day, they're that great, but the point stands that the entire game is filled with this. There's another duo of a reporter, Niall, and his camerawoman, Dorothy, who have a sort of grizzled senior looking out for a flaky intern kind of dynamic. She clearly pisses him off on numerous occasions, but still, the way he chooses to respond to her antics and continuously works together with her displays how he truly respects her. People fight, argue, they say things they don't really mean, but spending enough time around a person will get you to understand when words may be taken too far, how best to respond when the other is not themselves. I feel as if these games nail that kind of character interaction. Many other character relationships feel natural and real, and the cherry on top is getting to see these interactions become more layered as they overcome future trials together. I believe that Trails in the Sky FC is still one of the best Trails games by virtue of having a story and characters that only become better the more you play it. Despite being split in two, the Sky games offer a complete and satisfying narrative that'll have you enticed, and I can almost guarantee emotionally invested should you give them a chance. To this day, Trails in the Sky SC is probably the only game I've legitimately cried to. And going back, I found myself in a wave of nostalgia despite only playing these games not that long ago, and I realized why I love Trails through FC. For me, even if the lore is intriguing, and it is, believe me, being able to have a personal journey with memorable characters is much more important. Having a small core cast, focusing on their relationships with one another, and having that bleed back into the larger scope of the entire world, this type of storytelling really got me. And it's something I feel like the contemporary titles have slightly forgotten about. So is Trails in the Sky FC a slow burn of a game you should play just to have the context of what happens later on? If you're playing these games for the big plot twists and epic character crossovers and you just want that feeling of a narrative payoff, then yes, this game will be slow. And frankly, you could probably just watch a playthrough or read a synopsis on the most important events. If anything, its continuation SC will be more your speed. But if you're in the mood for a game that will carefully envelop you into its world, familiarize you with characters who help further engage you into the plot, all wrapped in a charming and timeless art style, Trails in the Sky FC couldn't be a better pick of a game. And if you still have yet to play a Trails game, then I greatly urge you to start with this one. You won't regret it.